I want to introduce Gusty tonight. I'm Deborah Nelson. I'm the Dean of the Division of the Humanities. This is going to be a window into her creative process. We're going to understand how a composer tackles a commission. And you're going to be introduced to Gusty's 365-sense approach to music composition, including some quite beautiful drawings that she does as she is composing and working out the form and content of the songs. If you don't know Gusty, I'm going to call her Gusty instead of Augusta Read Thomas, because that's what we all call her. Gusty is one of 6 university professors at the University of Chicago. She is a devoted teacher and the founder and director of the Chicago Center for Contemporary Composition and the leader of the Grossman Ensemble, which has, in a very short period of time, become one of the great ensembles in the country. It's comprised of 13 virtuosi on their instruments, and it's already made an incredible impact. The New Yorker has called her a truly virtuosic composer.
What kind of piece do I want to make? What is the aura? What is the atmosphere? What is the material of this piece? What kind of harmony? What kind of counterpoint? What timbral fields? And this one, of course, includes saxophones, but of course, how do you blend those with bass clarinet and the cellos and the percussion? And
right.
In this particular piece and in many of my works, I love percussion. Well, I love everything that's music, but I do love percussion. So this piece has 4 percussion and harp and piano, so there's this sort of flank of that kind of timbral world. And then, of course, with the orchestra, trying to have a variety of things. So, for instance, the strings will sometimes be playing arco with the bow, and sometimes everybody's playing pizzicato, and just
right.
when they play pizzicato, the wood blocks come in, or something like this.
Right.
So really sculpting the sound world.
Right. So it's interesting to me that you've said a couple of things. We have a process here that seems like kind of pretty kinetic. Like I'm scatting, I'm playing, I'm this, I'm that, and I know from my knowledge of you, you're dancing, you're using the body, you're using the ear, and you're weirdly using the eye, much more than I would have ever anticipated. So I want to show you guys a drawing that Gusty has made of her process. So this is what it means to write music for Gusty. So Gusty, can you take us through that image, because
sure,
it's not clear.
Thank you for preparing that. So the idea here was, it's a silly doodle, let's be very clear here, but the idea is, what is the process? So I usually start here at the purple line, and then I get a note, and then I get a sine wave, and then I improvise and sing and scat and dance and hear and play and do all these things, and then I get here and dream about the piece, and then I throw the whole thing in the garbage. I go right back to the beginning, and I was like, okay, that's not good, and then I do it again. And then,
how many times does one throw things at, like, a million?
Like, yeah, it's like rewrite the paragraph, rewrite the poem,
right,
rewrite the
it's
M
just
dash.
like that. It's just like that.
Move the adjective, whatever. Anyway, so finally you get through that, and you're like, okay, I've got something, and then I start experimenting, and then I start to actually build material.
Okay, so we have structural things. Now we're going to build something, and that could be a chord. That could
exactly.
be
a motive, or
okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. So you're not thinking. I'm a literature professor, so I think more narratively. Okay, I have a beginning, I have a middle, and an end. You're thinking, I got a block.
Well,
or not really.
No, I also think in literary terms, in the sense of it has to tell a story, and it has to have a logic, and there has to be a balance between the material and the form of the novel, the poem, whatever it might be. Okay. So it's similar, but once I get to start to build material, I'm thinking, okay, it's the New York Philharmonic, and it's not a piece for girls' chorus, it's not a piece for solo piano, it's a piece for orchestra. So what material do you need? And then it starts to have an organic craft. And this is what's most interesting to me, is this gestalt web, because I like to think that in my pieces, or I try at least, that you can't separate, let's say, timbre from rhythm, or spontaneity from space, or velocity from inner life, or tempo from flow, and so on and so forth. All of these objects have to be allied in a gestalt, for me, for a piece to really sparkle and turn into its own entity. And then this is just a silly thing, which is, if you follow your purple line with nuance and character and integrity and so forth, you come up here and it goes, and then it goes, and the notes come flying out off the top of the page, and then they fly up down to silence. So it's just a really quick doodle of like what one might go through. That might be a 9-month process. It might be a 6-month process.
Right.
It's really sort of a silly thing, but that's the way I like to try to make music. So it's very alive. I'm very embodied. I'm like feeling it, hearing it, singing it.
Right. Okay. So here we're going to get some blocks, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're going to end up seeing a piece of orchestration, like the actual orchestration that the Philharmonic is using this is where it starts. So can you talk a little bit about what are the building blocks, or what are the things that you land on? You say, okay, this is the starting point of this piece. At some point, you're going to have to choose from all those things, but you got to start somewhere. How do you know you've got your starting point?
Yeah, no, that's such a good question. I mean, like, for instance, it might be a chord. I'm thinking like like some huge dominant chord that you'd hear in a jazz thing or something. Then I'll be like, okay, I have a chord, you know. And then I might make versions of chords and different kinds of chords or outlays of chords, and thinking that that would be the right thing for the orchestra at this time for the piece. And then like this might be a doodle of an orchestration, a chord, and something's bursting out of it, and then the pizzicatos come flying out. Like little graphical things of kinds of ideas of how sound could flow, how sound could unravel in a piece. So this is just one random example. We should maybe go to the next slide.
Because what I'm seeing here, which I think we're going to move on to, is like there's no movement here, and music is about time and movement, and the chord is
exactly
right. No, so we got now. How are we going to get from that block to a block that has wheels on it or something?
I totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now where are we?
This is just another set of chords that one might develop for a piece.
Right. So we have more pieces of this piece.
Yeah. If you could imagine a scaffolding so that across the piece, the harmonic rhythm, the way that the harmony is moving has a logic that we're moving from certain kinds of chords to another, or sometimes the harmonic rhythm is very slow, like just that, and then you have like fast chords, you know. So the contrast of the rhythm of the harmony is quite fascinating, so on and so forth. So
what I'm not adept at reading is that for you reading this, there is harmonic progression, so there is movement. I just can't see it.
Yep.
Right. So embedded in what might look static to people who are not adept at reading music, you have the music. Any really musical person knows. Oh, we're moving here. We're moving from here to here. How we're going to get from here to here is not mapped out, but we're moving from here to here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the next slide this is just random material. Oh, we just threw some material up so you could see what this might be on my piano, like something that I would be working out. I think the next slide is. Do
you remember what you were working on here, or no?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm writing music every day.
Right, so right. It's draft paper. It's scratch paper.
It's scratch paper.
Okay.
This is just working out a vocal line. Just how one way that I could set a particular text, a particular poem. I probably didn't use it, but I was just fiddling around with it.
What does it mean to fiddle around with it?
Well, I mean, I might. That's a good question. I mean, I might start with something like, I'm just going to make something up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I might start with something like, da-dum-dee-da-dee-dum, da-dee-dum. Then I'm like, oh no, that's stupid. Okay, get rid of that one. You know, I'm fiddling around, and then I'm like, da-dee-dum, da-dee. I'm like, okay, maybe. Oh, that's stupid. You know, and then I might be thinking.
But you're playing, you have sort of an idea of the line, the melodic line at this point, right? We're not talking about chords, we're talking about a melody.
Exactly, and whether it should be like a leaning sound or a bursting sound or a flowing sound. You know, you can set poetry in different ways, and I try to like really feel it. So, and I sing it. So then it might be. I'll make many versions before I feel like I captured what the poet was, or tried to capture.
Right. So this is a question I have to ask. Is like, so if you were setting something. You know, I know you've set Emily Dickinson to music, for instance.
Yep.
You know, so is that a place where you say, okay, it's this word in the poem that is the spring?
Yeah.
Or like this is the thing the music's about.
Yeah.
And then that, you know, so like crafting a line for that word, or you craft a line and then put the word in it?
Absolutely. Like, I love to paint the words, because the poet has painted the words and has made music out of them.
Right.
But if you go to the next slide, if we could, this one.
Oh, that is Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, this is something I wrote called Sun Songs a million years ago on 3 Emily Dickinson texts, and I was just working out certain themes that were kept popping up across these particular poems and how I could relate them across the 3 movements. So the color coding was
a certain like musical sound?
It was sort of like an analysis of how I might approach the poetry, and I guess I was doodling some different textures for each movement, and just thinking about, well, I love Emily Dickinson, and also just about the sun and trying to capture these images. So that would be an exact example of, what we tried to do with these materials is to show you some chords and some harmonies and some doodles. And so it's different kinds of material that might be on the desk, not just, here's the notes.
Right. So here, I think what we're now going to try to do is turn the building blocks into something. So how do pieces, what you call material, could be, we got our chord blocks, we have our lines, we have our, melodies, but these are just pieces. This is like a junk drawer of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You have to get from the material to the form.
Right.
Right? So how does that happen?
No, that's exactly right. And one of the things I care a lot about, that I've been thinking about for 45 years, is the balance between material and form. Mm-hmm. Because if you have too much material squished into too small a form, it doesn't work. And if you have too little material that's just going on and on and on, it doesn't work, right? So form conserves energy. And how do you get something built right into the right form? So with these maps, this is my little way of doodling, like, okay, what am I doing? It's a 5-minute piece. There are 7 variations. There are different lengths. Trying to really keep track so that every note in the piece, every 16th note, everything is needed.
Right.
Well, we can't go out and say, well, let's cut this sentence out of the poem, or we don't need this paragraph in the novel. In fact, we don't need this whole chapter. Right. Get rid of the chapter. I want somebody to hear.
It's adapting a Jane Austen novel. Let's just get rid of that.
So the idea is to really try to make the balance between the material and the form. So if we just look at a couple of these, you can see I'm trying to keep track of.
But now you're imposing a little bit of discipline on yourself, right? So let me say how I'm reading this picture. We have time blocks now.
Yep.
Like, it can't just be everywhere. Now we are accountable to the time of this thing now. Yep. So these things are going to start to line up.
That's right. Yeah. And just to be clear, because you're absolutely right, but I just write spontaneously and musically, and I just follow my ear. And I want my form to be the reaction to the material.
Right.
In other words, I'm not saying, here's my form, and now I'm going to plot material into it.
Okay.
I'm actually making things up, and I'm like, oh, well, that should be shorter. Oh, that has to go longer. Wait, stop, move, this one, da, da, da. And then I realize at the end, that's what I built.
I see, okay.
So I usually draw 50 maps for each piece, and I never, ever follow any of them. Never. Because as soon as I get into the next bar, I'm like, oh, it's all wrong. And so I have to
So what's the function of the drawing? Because let me show you a couple more of these.
Yeah. This is after the piece was done, this particular
one. Okay, so
one.
you were,
and then
here we have some more.
This was also after the piece.
Process.
What did I build? This is a piece for the Utah Symphony called EOS, and it has all these different movements and different sections, and figuring out the phrase lengths to make sure they're, I like my phrase lengths not to all be the same length, so to speak, and I like the contrast of tempos and moods and so forth. So, just sort of keeping track of that.
And these were produced after the fact, the ones we're looking at.
These ones we're looking at. And this was a big piece on the Rumi's love poetry called Toward a Secret Sky, which is Rumi's words. A huge, piece for chorus and orchestra. And this is a messy map. This would have been one of my 50.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, what am I doing? And then I ended up cutting the piece of paper out and taping it on and just, figuring out where it is. And then I made a nice version of it, which is the next slide. That's the same piece.
Oh, wow.
But you can sort of tell, and I'm trying to show how I'm braiding material. You can see the braids and the twists. So the blue material comes back, the pink material comes back. Toward the end, we have a big counterpoint of all the materials and so on.
Right.
So it's just giving a quick picture. There's fast, and two slow things, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you one question because I want to get to then have us look at Bebop Kaleidoscope. But what is the visual mapping? What function does it serve for you?
So when I'm
Because you have something visual and it's called a score.
right.
Right? So that could be a visual map. But this is not a score. This is not something someone can play from. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. So for me, so life is busy, you know.
Yeah.
So like I'll be, doing 1,000 things, then I'm like teaching, then I'm running to the airport, and then I'm like on, etc. And so I need to keep track of like what is my material,
Right.
so that when I get back to my desk, I'm like in the pocket with it. So I might have on my desk a series of harmonies, a set of motives,
Right.
A map, a messy map of sort of what I'm building.
Right.
It's all very much like, as you said earlier, I forgot it was a good word, but like very spontaneous.
Right.
So that I can keep myself on track, and so that I can build the gestalt web that I was trying to talk about, so that the pieces are integrated and crafted and polished. And to do that, one has to really be in control of like literally every comma in a poem, or every capital letter, everything.
Right, yeah.
So they're serving different functions.
Right. But it is almost like a note-taking function. It's like, because there's so many elements that you're trying to balance, if we go back to that very first image, how do you balance them? Well, in some ways, the map is the map keeps everything in play, right? In a way that just coming back to the piano and going back to where you were might not capture all of that stuff that is that's part of the composition, but is not in it's not in the composition yet because it's in process.
I think that's exactly right.
Right.
These are basically glimpses into the process, just things that might be floating around on my living room. So
yeah, but they're just beautiful. So
this is just a capricious piece I wrote for the saxophone quartet called Shakespeare's Jesters. Down the left margin is all the timings, and then I just drew a bunch of gestures. So it's just really silly.
Okay, so now now you understand this is the process that is the universal Gusty process for the last, I'm assuming with some refinement, for the last 40 some odd years.
Yes.
Because Gusty's only 44. And, but so now we're into Bebop Kaleidoscope. So do you want to look at a few of them, or you want to start with this one?
We can start with this one,
Yeah.
Thank you. So the idea, this is the piece that's premiering tomorrow night, and I was just trying to capture the aura of it. Because my idea with this piece is that we would have a kaleidoscope that you would be twisting. And as you twist it, the beads, they go to the new areas, and that out of the kaleidoscope was flying out these bebop lines.
Right.
So that the orchestra is like a kaleidoscope, and then we twist it, and then out comes like a whole other adventure, and then another one.
So, so with the kaleidoscope, you could say, okay, the same elements are in there, but you twist it, and all of a sudden they're in a new arrangement with different source or different way of shaping the light as you know. So are there the same elements that are going to get like completely reimagined in the next section?
That is the perfect question.
Okay.
Because the answer...
And this one we did not even talk about because I'm just realizing it right now.
No, that's exactly right. So basically the 5, in this piece called Bebop Kaleidoscope, there are 5 kaleidoscopes, that come, 5 Bebop Kaleidoscopes. And they're all based on the same fundamental material. Yeah. But I'm basically looking at the first material sort of like this, and then the next one I'm looking at it like that, and then the next one I'm looking at it like this.
Right.
So it's like almost going through a prism.
Now, is any of that material from Duke Ellington?
No. So in my work, all of my work is completely Gusty, for better or worse. I don't do quotes. Not that anyone else shouldn't, because
there's a lot of great stuff.
It's totally great stuff with quotes. But everything I do is like completely out of thin air. I just make everything up. But one of the things about Duke Ellington there's many things. but one of them is the harmonies. It sounds like he has 7 fingers on each hand, you know, these like, cha, 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 and I don't know how he played all those notes. And so that was one inspiration, because this piece has all these really big kind of jazzy kind of splash chords. Now, they're completely mine, and some people might say, well, in your piece it sounds more like Stravinsky, you know, than it sounds like Duke. Or maybe it sounds, you know, a little bit like Miles Davis or whatever.
Right, sure.
But when you put it in the orchestra, it can sometimes go towards Stravinsky. But in any case, you're exactly right. So with this doodle, I was just trying to capture like 5 spinning kaleidoscopes. Like just like that's kind of the feel of the piece. It's very optimistic and colorful and fast and very virtuosic.
And you can kind of see how this goes into time. We're now moving in time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a map of the form of the piece, and there is the intro is in blue, and then there's 5 kaleidoscopes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th one. And then the timeline and all the words, it's hard to see here, but the sort of adjectives that the piece, sometimes it's spirited, sometimes it's lyrical, sometimes it's punchy, sometimes it's energetic or with groove. I'm just trying to read my own words. And then the yellow dots are where we turn the kaleidoscope.
Okay.
So you do the first kaleidoscope, and then when it says 2, you turn the kaleidoscope.
So can you give away the little secret? What happens when you turn it?
So basically what happens is you have this animated bebop kind of thing, and then all of a sudden the orchestra sort of stops and does, each turn is different. But one of them is the whole orchestra just goes, jump, 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 wham, boom, yeah, wham. You know, and then the next one goes, jump, boom. Go. Wham! Yeah. You know, so like each of the twists is a little different, but the audience can follow it because you realize like,
you realize we're now in a new.
Yeah, because it sort of stops for just a split second and then out pops a new adventure. So for instance, the second kaleidoscope is all plucked notes. That means the strings are pizzicatoing and the tempo changes, and then there's a big accelerando. You can sort of see that there, but so there's a real sense of character change. Right. So even if you miss the twist of the kaleidoscope, you realize, oh, we're in another one. That kind of feel. So that across the piece, it moves quite quickly because there's 5 of these popping out. Right. And
well, because you're going to do 5 of them in 8 minutes,
exactly.
I believe. Yeah. So that's going to go quick.
You can see the last 2 are just a minute. The longest one is the middle one, number 2. You can see it's all proportional. And yeah, the last one is a kind of a what do you call that? Cousin of the opening blue one, and so on and so forth. There's inner relationships.
So and can you hear like something running through all 5, but it's going to sound different because it's in a different juxtaposition with other sound, or it's played by different instruments, or you know how do you keep that motif going here, but you're not jumbling it up, you're just doing something else to it.
Exactly. So for instance, just to give a quick example, one of the sections involves timpani and conga drums and bongo drums and tom-toms. So you have like this really cool drumming thing going on. Yeah. And with it, well, it's all very, it's very crafted, let me put it that way. Like the colors of the drums, the tunings of the drums are all specified and so on and so forth. And then another...
Is that unusual to be that precise with the sort of?
I don't know if I can, I'm not sure, but I'm like hyper precise. Okay. For whatever that's worth. But, and then like another section is like the pizzicato one. Yeah. And then another one, you know, has a sort of a longer line feel and so
where
forth.
do those 2 saxophones come in?
Well, so it's just, for instance, they're just seated in the orchestra, so we have the flutes and the oboes and the clarinets, and then we just happen to have 2 saxophones. No, many composers have used saxophone. Sure. For instance, Ravel used saxophone. Yeah. But it's when a typical orchestra, the roster doesn't have saxophones. Yeah. Now, sometimes composers use them, and then saxophonists are hired, such as with Duke Ellington's piece tomorrow night as well. But it's such a beautiful sound for me, especially to blend with the brass and the muted brass and the unmuted brass, and then you have the saxophones and you have your woodwinds. So I have all of these transformations of woodwind timbre across not only the register, but you're just like when it's a bass clarinet, and then all of a sudden it's like an alto saxophone. Oh wait, no, it's the cellos, and you know.
Yeah. So you started like, oh, saxophones, Duke Ellington. Did they even end up in the piece a little bit? Are they dominant? Are they important? I mean, not important. Everything's important. Are they conspicuous?
I think they have solos, but
Yeah.
I made micro solos for everybody.
Okay.
So like the trumpet has a micro solo, each of the percussionists has micro solos, the big boom, and the saxophones do too, because the piece is very kaleidoscopic. It's moving fast. And so it's one of those pieces as a player, the train has left the station. Like you're on that train and just keep going, you know. You got to like get right in the pocket with the piece. And it also has a lot of what's very rhythmical, this particular piece. But I like these things where you have like, very simply like 1E and a 1E and a 1E, or 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, like, so sometimes you can come in on the beat like 1.
Right.
Or you can come on in the and, but sometimes you can come in the you know, like 1 and
Yeah.
You got to like get right there on the last 16th, and then
I would think this would take a lot of rehearsal.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, because you got to get everybody to agree what the is. And,
Right,
and
right.
And it's quite interesting if the piece just goes da 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 da, you know, I'm completely falling asleep.
Right.
But if I get all the like little zoop, boop, boop, in there and all my hiccups and crafting all these rhythms, and then the crossfades, and then the hockets. That means the different players are hocketing these rhythms together. But it means everybody has got to be right on the money.
Right.
And but then when it happens, it really swings.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And they've got it.
And they've got it.
Okay.
The conductor and they got it. Yeah.
So here we are this is now what all of that stuff, that's the score. So I know, oh no, that's the score. What is this one?
That's the full page, but it was too hard to see, so we just did a zoom.
I know, it's really hard. It's probably much easier for people on Zoom to see the score. But can you use your pointer and talk a little bit? So from all of that material, this is where we get, that's what the Philharmonic has to work with to produce that enormous range of effects that you've been talking about. And so how do you translate all of that? You can't into the score, and do you show them the drawings or not, or is it all contained within what you've put on the page?
Yeah, thank you. So I sent them just the score and the individual parts. That means the flute player got their part, the percussionist got their part, and so on and so forth. So it was a big box of paper.
Yeah.
But one of the things just to point out here is the detail of the notation. I mean, it's probably very hard to see, but I'm very, very clear. Like you're solo 1 and you're the primary line, and then it's tutti that it's a pitch, and this one should be resonant, and then that one's arco. And then here it says, even though others are lifting their pedals, let your bells ring. So I want some of the bells to ring and other people to stop the resonance because the harmonies are changing, and so being very clear to the players where you're muted, where you're unmuted. Blend your pizzicati with the timpani. So at every single page, I'm trying to really tell the artist so that when they get their part, like, okay, I'm with the timpani, I'm going to stop my ring. I'm pizzicato, it's solo, this kind of thing. It's hard to see. And I also put here, what are the primary lines? Because when you have all these hockets flying by, it's very helpful for the player to know, oh, I'm the primary line at this, for those 3 notes. Because I want these, particular motives, I guess you could say, to have the clarity. And it's very helpful for the player to know, like, where are they sort of in the background, where are they, that's the note. And so this is just one page. The score is actually in the reception room where the food will be.
So
if anyone wants to look at it.
Look more closely.
It's lots and lots of pages. So this is, to create a big orchestral piece, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I just want to do a little contrast here. All right. This is very free-flowing, very improvisational, very mixed mode, multi-artistic, throwing everything up in the air. And this is control freak.
Yes.
Yeah. So like every single instrument, every single player knows exactly the spirit, the volume, the texture of their sound. Like this is painting with music. Everybody knows. So how do we get from that one version of Gusty to control freak Gusty?
No, it's a really good point. It's a great question. I've been thinking about this for 40 years because on the one hand, I want to be spontaneous and improvisatory and living in my body and my sounds and playing the piano and throwing things out and singing and doing all my stuff. And then on the other hand, I got to produce a piece for a commission that I might not meet the musicians. I mean, like,
right. But people have very different modes of scoring their work. Like that is a very detailed score.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, with in terms of with words, you're doing this, then this should sound like ebullient, then resonant. Like I don't even know how to think that, much less play that on a. I mean, yeah. So.
No, I think because I feel the way I feel is the artists are so good.
Yeah.
And for instance, all these sculpted dynamics, you start double forte as loud as you can, and then you go suddenly to mezzo forte, and then you go up to double forte. So you get all these sort of bursting shapes dynamically, which makes, it's very dimensional when you listen to it. Yeah. If everything's mezzo forte and it's sort of just, and then it gets sort of forte 20 bars later. But I like to have, it's just this very special detail in the dynamics being sculpted. But so, for instance,
it's very physical.
It's very physical. It's very athletic.
And
many times I don't meet my artists. Like pieces are played all over the world, and I don't meet the people. I don't even know they bought the music. And so sometimes they'll be writing me, and they're like, "Thank you for your adjectives. Your scores are so clear. I know exactly what you want." And that's because I want them to. I knew what I wanted.
Right.
So if I tell them they're so good, they'll do it.
Right.
They'll just do it. And the New York Philharmonic, they get it. They're professionals. They see the dynamics. Boom, And rather than the conductor or somebody saying, "What dynamics do you want? Is this loud here? Is this soft? Should we give this a shape? What a waste of everybody's time. Especially since I knew the shape I wanted. That kind of thing. So,
do you ever change your mind once you hear them playing it and think, "Oh, I really should"? I don't mean like a huge rewrite, but like, okay, let's just this one measure. Let's change it up.
Sometimes, like 25 years ago, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, and I would like change something, but these days I work so hard on the front end.
Right.
So for instance, the piece. I don't know if I'm going to make any changes, but it might be like one dynamic in the second woodwind, something, or it might be some tiny thing.
Right.
But it's changed as I've gone on.
Yeah. No, I mean, is that a mark of
stupidity? Maybe.
No. I'm wondering if it's just that you have more control over the sound you want to produce. You're more certain. And that makes sense as, having composed, I don't even know how many works, hundreds, you have a feel for it. You're not as surprised by something when it's in the hands of someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. And I used to go to a rehearsal and I would say, "Oh, but that should be playful." And then I'd see the artist would pick up their pencil and they'd write "playful." And I was like, "Oh, I should have just written playful." Or I'll say, this should be suddenly very interior and then bursting forward. So then I realized if I just say that, they're like, "Oh, of course that's what it is."
Yeah. Yeah. So what about conductors? So we're talking a lot, like the conductor might as well go home, right?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, Ken David is a phenomenal conductor. Right. There's a lot to get through with this piece.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things he said is, I think, let me put it this way, I think conductors really appreciate well-annotated scores.
Right, okay.
Because then they just know what they're building.
Yeah.
So out of respect for Ken and the musicians, it's like, okay, that's what we want, and so we don't have to waste, there was not 1 second of rehearsal, not one, on a question. It's just all right there. And that is such, that's something I try to have my students, I want their technique to be fantastic, their craft to be first class. and we work on that week after week after week, and it really sparkles when it's when the craft is there.
Right. So then they can be really working on that timing that's so difficult, or these dynamics that are so quick to change, and
exactly. But and also even more fundamentally, I want them to find their own soul, their own beauty, their own grace, what they want to say, and then when they know what they want to say or what their material is or where they're heading, then we can start to, then there's there, and we can start to say, well, that's beautiful, and this has so much potential, and then we work together week after week after week building a piece. So sometimes...
How many rehearsals will you get with the Philharmonic?
Oh, 3. We read it yesterday, and then we read it this morning, and then we'll just run it tomorrow. So it's limited rehearsal time, and that's another reason to be so detailed.
Yes, exactly, right.
Because... you know, this is a huge program tomorrow night, massive. It's like so many works. So Ken has done a wonderful job pulling it, and the orchestra too.
Right.
But it's, you know, some ensembles have lots of rehearsal time, and it just depends on the piece and the ensemble and the circumstance.
Great. So Gussie, we want to be able to take some questions. We always try to take some questions from online. We obviously take them from the audience. We will never begin to get through all the questions. So
yes, I'm just curious, do you ever share any of the drawings with the conductor or with the orchestra?
Oh, thank you for your question. You know, quite often the conductors ask me for them.
Because they now know that this is part of your thing.
Yeah, but it's also, you get a big score. Can you go back to back one slide or 2 slides? There. If you get a big score and you're like on an airplane and you're flying to Tokyo and you have 3 other concerts and then you do and it's like, oh my God, Augusta Thomas score arrived. You know, then they're like, okay, that's what it is. It's in 5 sections, and it can be very, very helpful.
Right, that really simplifies things. I mean, like, this is by no means simple, but like, okay, this is the piece. And now I'm going to see how it happens that we get there.
Exactly. And many times conductors do this for themselves. Like they'll take a Mahler symphony and they'll make sort of a map of it. Like what are they building? They'll retro do it. Like this, I also did this after the piece. But it can be very, very helpful because people get a sense, okay, there's different phrase lengths. Each of the kaleidoscopes has a different amount of sub-phrases. The tempi changes. You know, you just get like a 38,000 view.
Right.
So with this particular piece, I gave this to the conductor today. So not, you know, we're almost at the end of the process. So it wasn't part of the original presentation, as it were. But then some conductors actually write me and say, did you make a map?
Yeah. Do people make maps that are just less beautiful than the ones you make? Or is that...
Yeah, you know,
I mean, those are really extraordinary visual objects. And so I can imagine someone mapping it just ugly.
Well, I mean, many composers do these kind of sketches. Like if you look at the Beethoven sketchbooks, the Mozart sketchbooks, the Boulez sketchbooks, Oliver Nussen had beautiful sketches. Many people do this to different levels of, however it's a useful tool to them.
Right. Did you adopt that from seeing some of these sketchbooks into your own process, or?
Probably, but I think I was just sort of an obsessed with music child.
Yeah. And
so I just sort of did it because that was just what I was doing.
Right.
But then I realized later, oh, the other people did this, and then I learned, you know, and I've enjoyed studying people's sketchbooks.
Right.
And then also like poetry sketchbooks, for instance, T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, really interesting to me. Or even architectural sketchbooks, or even mathematical equation sketches, where you see the mathematical equation's been scratched out, and another version is, you know. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really fun.
As a university professor, how do you show and explain this to students? Do you simplify scores to help them learn the process? Like, what is your process in educating the next generation of composers?
Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I love my students. I love them, and they're like my friends, and we are a very tight crowd. They're beautiful artists, amazing people, great citizens, and full of creativity and beauty and soul and grace. So every week I meet with them for an hour, This year I have 8 of them, so it's 8 hours. So one comes at 9 o'clock, one at 10 o'clock, one at 11 o'clock, so on and so forth. I can't do too many in a row because it's so intense.
Right.
They come in with something, I have to totally react on the spot, be 100% on my game. So, I'll have like a lunch break or something and then do a couple of more.
Yeah.
But it's super fun. And then it depends on the composer. Sometimes they're at the stage where they're developing their material. Sometimes they're at the very, very end where they want me to kind of be line editing. Sometimes we're talking about what is it you want to say? Where are you going with your music?
Right.
What is your, for lack of a better word, like where's your aesthetic stance?
Yeah.
Or what is your philosophical stance? So it can get very, very intense conversations and...
So do you, so a composition might be like an assignment, right? And it has certain parameters. One way you keep your students from just making a holy mess out of things is like a page length for me is kind of the scope of an idea. So a 3-page paper has a different scope. It's not just longer, it's different level of idea. And so like, do you give them the enabling constraints that that you get with a commission?
Yeah, and so it depends on each student, but for a particular student, they might be doing a particular project for which they'll have a performance in 6 months.
Right.
And then we'll figure out like what that one should be. For another piece, they'll say, Gusty, what should I write next? And then I'll say, well, I think maybe, this would be a good genre to investigate.
Yeah.
And then we'll sort of talk about whether that is the right way for them to go. Or I'll say, why don't you pick? And then we'll discuss it. With my undergraduates, I have a very particular curriculum, which is I make them listen to a lot of repertoire. And we talk about the assigned listening for 10 minutes. And then I give them exercises, such as make 7 chords that progress or write motives that are rhythmically animated or whatever. And then we do 15 minutes of that. And then we do half an hour on their piece. With the graduate students, typically we're also talking repertoire a lot, but they're a little bit more, they'll come in with more material. Right. So it depends on the student and also the moment. Sometimes people are like switching styles or something. It's like a moment like that. Sometimes people are like just really on the track that they're on and they want to make the next piece that way. So it's very vivid and alive and changing every day. And that's what I love about it.
Does that emphasis on repertoire, is that typical for composition practice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, typically, in my, the composers know a lot of repertoire.
Yes.
Like that's just, we're like repertoire hounds.
Right.
The standard repertoire, the constant new music. Like I listen to music all day long, literally. And another thing composers, we also use music theory all the time. Yeah. Like because, working out all of this is like. Yeah.
I mean, and this is, University of Chicago's composition program is embedded in the music department. Exactly. It's not a music school. You are cheek by jowl with music historians, music theorists. Exactly. Like that is our, let's say, artistic philosophy is that you can't write music if you don't listen to music, and you can't write books, you can't write an essay if you don't read essays. Like those things all go together. And so that has obviously enriches your practices to have a conversation with, Larry Zbikowski about music theory. And,
absolutely. The great colleagues totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In-house question. There's a question right up here. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, that's the hand I saw. So.
And there's a gentleman also.
I hold this?
Yeah.
Hi. I need to, I'll be honest with you, I've never heard your music. I will go home and I will look it up and I will listen to it.
It's great. We want people
curious.
to be introduced to her music.
So I'm coming to you as someone who, my relationship to the University of Chicago, I received a master's degree in painting. And so one of the things is that seeing the doodles, I think in every art form you have that. You have people who are creative, and they have to have at least a plot or a plan before they start to actually go into it. And so I've seen this before, and so it's interesting to see it from music. So thank you for sharing this. With painting, our doodles is actually on the canvas that ends up being, presented to the public. So our doodles are buried a lot of times. But what I wanted to ask you was, it's the most liberating anything that any art professor ever told me. It's a famous artist who's dead now. He came in one day and he looked at us and he said, "It's okay to steal." And that was so liberating because you have this weight as an artist to create something new. And what he was saying to us is that what the new that is created comes from what was done before. And my job, and this is what I told my students later when I would shock them with, "It's okay to steal," is that you have to take it and you have to modify it and you have to make it new again. You have to bring something else to it. And so that's my question to you. What do you steal from? And how have you modified it to make it your own? What is unique about you?
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful question. Thank you. And I want to see your art. I really do. So the first thing that came to my mind was a wearing blender, or like the Cuisinart thing. So you put in there some Ravel and some Stravinsky and some Miles Davis, then you throw in the Ella Fitzgerald, then you got the Duke, and then you got world music, and then you've got improvisers, and then you've got me like jumping around the living room singing, and then you like put it on like, and then out comes Gusty. In other words, you couldn't hear the piece and go, well, that's where the Schubert bit, and here's the Mahlerian quote, or you wouldn't hear anything like that. It's really digested and blended, and for better or worse. Now that said, I've been listening to music avidly for my entire life, so there's a lot of things in that wearing blender.
Right.
And I also try to not listen to things the same over and over. So for instance, there's pieces I love and I could just keep listening to them forever. But then I think, well, there's 1,000 million other pieces I haven't even heard yet. So I'm quite disciplined with my listening. Like for instance, when I drive to the university, I have a whole playlist and I'm very rigorous about what I'm listening to, and I have a lot of things I have to listen to for various volunteer work I do. But, so I try to keep really fresh. But at the end of the day, I hope you could say, you can like my music or not, which is fine, but you can say that's Gusty. It's not derivative of somebody else. It has its own complete world of, if you will listen to all my pieces, I've created I'm like over there in the far, like over there somewhere, like cultivating my own garden. And if somebody wants to come look at it, they could. But I'm not trying to be like the flavor of the month or the follow the trend or be trendy or like switch my, I'm just following my soul in my own little way with a lot of wearing blender influences.
Final question. Are we going to do it? Oh, okay, good, great.
Thank you so much for your insightful comments. I was actually looking because I remember, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
You came and did a Harvard lecture in 2016, and so I'm really excited to see you again and hear from you. I'm intrigued about this question of structure, and I think about it with jazz, which is often thought of as being unstructured, but is very structured, but still has the space for improvisation. It was sort of interesting as you were talking about how you score it for orchestra, and you're so particular, and so I'm wondering, do you think that about the tension there between sort of for orchestras having to be so structured and not really having as much room for improvisation in the way that we typically think about it in jazz, or how does that resonate as you think about honoring Ellington in orchestral?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question. And thanks for coming to the Harper lecture and coming back to this lecture. How sweet of you. So one of the things I love about jazz and music is the spontaneity of it. Like it's just going like ba-ba-doo, 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 ba-ba-doo. It's like, you can't do that, but you have to do that. And it's like the wrong note, but it's the right wrong note. Yeah. It's like, it's got to be that dominant flat 13th, but it can't be, but it has to be. And so my music is full of that. Like, you don't know quite what I'm going to do next, and twisting fast and very dimensional. Mm-hmm. So that all comes from jazz. The question is how to get it into the notation so that 100 musicians can just keep it alive. And this is the good point about your question, because on the one hand, I have to give a very crafted score.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I want the inner life not to go away.
Right.
I want you to come to the audience and feel like what my stomach felt. And when you have great artists, they'll do that. They can feel what I felt, and then they feel it, and then they project it, and then the audience can feel it. But that takes a lot of technical skill, a lot of just athleticism, a lot of clear notation. So I just to your point, I'm really trying to keep that spontaneity in my sound.
For 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when the music is slow, you still want it to feel like it had to go there. It just, it couldn't go over there, it had to go over here. So there's a sense of spontaneity even at a slower tempo. It doesn't have to all be like the Louis Armstrong 5, which of course I revere those albums, oh my goodness. But, you know, super hot. But it can also just be some slow ballad. Let's, you know, like Miles or something like this, where it's still equally as transforming.
Thank you, Gusty.
Thank you,
That
Debbie.
was so much fun.
Thank
It
you.
is so, it's just such a revelation to look into your process. And I wish I was going to be at the Philharmonic tomorrow night, but I'm not.
I want to thank you for being our dean. It's really, really nice of you, and I so appreciate all your work and for inviting me to your series. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. So mentioning that, I want to remind all of you in the room, but also all of you on Zoom, that we have in February, Adrian Brown talking about race and housing, and Neil Atkinson taking us through Florence in 1492 in, I forget which day, April. These are always really fun, and the conversations go in directions you never expect them to. So thank you, and good night. And those of you who are in the room, it is such a pleasure. I'm so happy that you came here tonight, and let's go have a little food and drink and talk to Gusty. Thank you.